This area right here back in 1964 through 1968 was actually the living quarters for the sheriff here at Shiawassee County. And then at that point in time, this area became the Detective Bureau. As you can see back here, I mean, we have one small interview room. Our concerns a lot of times with inmates is if we have to interview someone that's already in custody in the jail, we have to bring them down, right down through the main part of the sheriff's department, down the hallway, which leads, to this area. And then once here, we have a door here that leads out that's unsecure. Obviously, once the inmate's here inside, they are shackled and secured in the room, but it's just the transporting back and forth is what makes it really tough. And that room is insulated the best it could be, but we have obviously 2 doors here leading for deputies to come in and out. We also have other detectives in here and our road lieutenant, which officers come in and out of here quite a bit. So when we're in trying to conduct an interview, this room here, can be back and forth between people that kind of interrupts the interviews.
This is a conceptual drawing of the future jail. If the proposal passes, it'll take months and months to actually get the final design. But when we were talking about the lack of space for an interview room, this would provide for extra interview rooms, would solve some of the detectives' problems when they're interviewing multiple suspects. It's not like in the movies where you can interview somebody, close the door when you hear an inconsistency, walk down, open up another door, and then interview that suspect. Again, it's back and forth with these people in an unsecure environment. To give you an example of that, when the state police investigated the double murder that occurred at Walmart, they took a look at our interview room, the lack thereof actually, and said this is not going to work. They had to load those double murder suspects into their cars, take them back to Flint, and interview them at the post over there. So again, when you take somebody like that out of a secure cell and for transportation, you are taking an extreme risk. And those are risks that are occurring on a daily basis right here, just simply for the lack of facilities that we have, or proper facilities.
We have one very small holding cell, and then there's a narrow corridor, and then my office. And on any Friday morning, which is typically our sentence date, we can have up to 6 or 7 detainees up there. And I think that you'll know as well as I do that the more people, the more traffic, the more chaos, the more opportunity for harm that exists. And what happens is when you've got so many detainees cramped in such a small space, it poses a danger not only to the public, but to the staff, to law enforcement, and to myself. In fact, a couple of years ago, we had a double murder and a double jury trial. And we had to find a semi-permanent place to hold 2 defendants that could have no contact. So they couldn't be held together in the holding cell. We had to find alternative place to secure the suspect, defendant, detainee while this trial had rolled out. And so what we had to do, because we didn't have appropriate facilities for them, is we had Buildings and Grounds make a cement block. Yeah, that's right, a cement block, and then put a door handle into the top of the block, and then we let the cement set around it. And of course we carpeted the block, some nice carpet, and then placed this block, probably weighed 75 pounds, in the clerk's office. And then we had to handcuff the defendant suspect to the block so that he couldn't escape or cause harm to anyone. So that's a problem. So I think what the circuit court needs is some other way to detain suspects and defendants that have business in circuit court, not in this small little cubicle of a cell that's not 5 feet away from my office.
This is a 1963 Cadillac, same year that the jail was built, and the same year our president was assassinated. Now, I use this as an example because obviously a Cadillac is a very nice vehicle. You can see it's shiny and things like that, and I'm sure this jail was at one time. But if you were to drive this car, an average of 15,000 miles a year, for the last 56 years, like this jail has been used, you'd have 840,000 miles on it. And so we like to give this as a reference of what it may look like now. And I think it's very comparable to the condition that our jail is in. And it's not even being driven on an average daily basis like this picture may be. This jail is used thousands and thousands of times by inmates this year, as I told you earlier. We average about 2,700 bookings here at the jail a year, and in the past it was even higher. So why now? Why do we need a jail now? Because this building is outdated. It is wore out. There's many problems with the infrastructure of the jail, and those breakdowns in the jail cause security risk to the correctional deputies that do their jobs here every day. This jail averages 500 work orders a year, and the maintenance department for the county, which is called County Buildings and Grounds, spends about 60% of their time in this building doing maintenance. So you can imagine that the other county buildings are probably not getting the attention that they need just for that sole fact. These guys work very hard to keep this building up. They're in here, like I said, a number of times a day trying to fix things, and they do a fine job, but it's just trying to keep up in the constant breakdowns. I can give you some examples of that. Just 2 weeks ago, we had a maximum security cell that the toilet was leaking so bad, but you can't get parts for it anymore. So what they had to do is climb into one of the plumbing hatches, and they had to cut the toilet off the wall. The toilet is then brought to SL&H, and it's fixed, it's pressurized, and then returned. But that takes time. It was down about 30 days, and we have to take those maximum security prisoners and place them into general population. And anytime you do that and you go against what the Michigan Department of Corrections says is policy, then the county assumes some great liability if something were to happen. But unfortunately, I don't have any other choice. If I don't have the cells to put these people in, we have to put them somewhere. This particular hatch, like many, one hatch will service 2 inmate cells. If we have to shut the water off to this one, it will actually shut the water off to the other cell. So we're displacing not only the inmates that are in one cell while we work on it, but the other one as well. In our plumbing hatches, there's often standing water at the bottom, and the maintenance people have to crawl through those hatches that are waist high. It's difficult to get in them. A new design would be much different than that. But as you can see, there's lots of corrosion here, constant moisture in there. All the showers, they vent into these areas, and there's no way for the moisture to escape. And I think that's one of the main reasons that we've been cited on the mold that's in these. We have to clean them out periodically. But again, all the pipes are corroded, and if you trace them down to the bottom, you'll see that that's where these pipes enter the solid concrete, so you can't really service them. Many of the things you see here have been replaced by PVC, but others have not. To give you an example, what happens is this hatch supplies water to 2 inmate cells, and if you shut the water off for one cell to work on it, you're actually shutting the water off to both cells. So that displaces the inmates in both cells. We have to physically take them out of the cell, find another spot in the jail for them. And again, it's security risks like that are unnecessary and shouldn't be occurring. Many of the parts that are used in the jail are no longer made or there's nobody to work on them. We had one of the locks to the holding cells break, and we tried to get somebody to come in and fix it, and found out the only one that fixes these locks are in Wisconsin. Now, the company wanted us to pay the transport fees for the employee to come here, but we couldn't afford to do that, so we ended up buying a new lock, and just one lock on that door was $500. The electrical systems on the maximum security cells no longer work. They will work manually by cranking them open, but if something should break in there, there are no parts available for those.
We're at a maximum security cell inside the jail. In order to open the cells in this building, we use large brass keys, the same that they have used for most of the 20th century. In a modern jail, everything's push button. You don't have to worry about bending a key or using a locking system that no one in the state can work on anymore. And if we have a problem with the tumblers inside of our locks in the jail, we have to have someone from Wisconsin or Florida fix them, because there is no one else that trains in this because it's obsolete now. In order to open these cells, we have to use one key. And then inside the cell, there are 3 different individual cell doors. So you have to flip which one you want, use a handle to open the door inside. And then use another lever to open this door to let the person out. It's a lot of moving parts to open one door.
Some of our immediate needs here at the Sheriff's Department are the roof, which is leaking very bad. The water lines here, some are low pressure, they're plugged, they're clogged. The sewer lines are the same. Sometimes we have sewage backups into the hallway. I have testimony from inmates, trustees as we call them, that they're willing to come and speak to the people how they've had to clean up the sewage that's flown down the hallways because of sewer backups. We have electrical upgrades. We've been found to be in violation of the electrical code the way we are, and so we need many updates in that field. The heating and cooling. Both reports cite that the sensors are not working. There's fluctuating temperatures of 20 degrees. I dare say it's 30. Because in one occasion we opened the door, it was so hot in there, a man was having a heat stroke. We had to transport him to the hospital, but yet if you go down the hall where we have the windows boarded up to try to keep the heat in, the temperature would be 50, 55 degrees on a cold winter day. Back in the 60s, the jail was constructed with large windows, but as the efficiency of the building declined, we were not able to keep the heat in there. So what we had to do was insulate the windows and then board them up. Unfortunately, the Michigan Department of Corrections tells us that by doing that, we are in violation of the natural lighting that we're supposed to allow for the inmates. And I can't do that. I have to kind of weigh, what may be better for them. And in this case, I think at least being in a cell that's, 60-some degrees, probably much better than the worse.